Technique matters, and today I'm going to run you through 3 main changes that one of my players made that has really helped him turn his serve into a weapon. At the end of the video, we'll discuss some really important information on what it takes to change your strokes and the common mistakes that players of all levels make when they're trying to make technical changes to their game. Film yourself so that you can see if making any of the changes that Henry, the player in this video, made will also help you make your serve better. I'm Malhar from Before and After Tennis, and let's do it. I've synced the videos, and we'll watch them at a quarter speed here. Okay, first things first, we're talking about the height of the toss. Very simply, the higher you toss, the faster the ball falls through the air. Then you also have to think about making a timing. So if we just look at both balls here, notice how fast the ball on the left is falling versus the one on the right. It catches up, I know it's a little bit off the screen, but it catches up quite fast to the one on the right. We haven't even considered things like if it's a windy day, if the sun is in your eye, or if there's score pressure. Sure, you can make this timing when it's 30-all, 2-all in the first set, but making this timing when it's 3-all and you're trying to save a break point at 30-40 is a little bit more difficult. And I'm just giving you the logic and basically the physics behind why we recommend lowering the height of your ball toss. Are there players who serve well with higher tosses? Of course. And if you can toss high and serve well, I'm not going to say anything to you. Ryan Reedy at 2 Minute Tennis has a great toss to contact timer, but we won't look at that today. Rather, we'll touch on how do we do it? How do we lower the height of the toss? So if we look here on the left, one of the things that players often feel is when they release the ball, they feel, well, if I toss lower, then I won't have enough time to complete my service motion. It feels really rushed. I don't like it. I don't want to make the change. So this is a coach joke that I first heard from Steve Smith, and that is when you can't sleep, you toss and turn, but when you're hitting a serve, you want to turn and then toss. What does that mean? So if we look here on the left, look at how Henry has already released the ball. We can actually set a timer for difference in release times. So he's tossed the ball, and then if we look here on the right in the after, Henry releases the ball nearly half of a second after he's tossed it in the before, which is quite a lot. One of the things that we see with players who turn and then toss is that you automatically create separation, which is the next thing we're going to move on to. But if you turn and then you toss, you won't feel as rushed. It won't feel like, oh crap, the ball is way too low. You'll definitely feel more comfortable making that timing. And why is that? It's just because of where the racket is by the time the ball has left your hand. So if we look here, this is where the racket is by the time the ball has left Henry's hand. And then if we look here on the left, Henry's racket has to travel all the way up, around, and then into the contact when he's releasing the ball. That's why it feels really rushed if you don't make a change with your toss timing. When I say timing, I mean in terms of when you release the ball in relation to what your body is doing. And yes, there is a case to be made that if you do what Henry's doing here on the left, you could potentially get more racket speed because you have to force yourself to swing the racket faster. But you can also achieve that with what he's doing on the right here, which is turning, then tossing into that contact, which leads us to the next change that Henry made. Piggybacking off of this idea of turning then tossing is, if we look on the left here, basically Henry wasn't using his body as efficiently as he could. There's 2 kinds of rotation you want on your serve. The first one is the shoulder over shoulder rotation, which is just how sharply upwards do your shoulders face. And the other one is transverse rotation, or just another way of thinking about it is coil. Are you separating the segments of your body? So if we look at Henry, it all starts really with the feet. I know it's a little bit off the screen here. So his feet are turned a little bit more towards the side, which allows him to turn his knees, which allows him to turn his hips and his shoulders. If we look at where both both players are, look at Henry here on the left. He has no separation. His shoulders are not turned more than his knees. So he basically cannot unwind into the contact. He's just relying on the shoulder over shoulder rotation. Again, it's all about efficiency. You just want to use the ground and figure out a way to use your body, the best way to transfer that energy from the ground upwards into the contact. And the way to do it is to get a little bit more separation. Turn your shoulders more than your hips, more than your knees. Basically, you need to have your feet roughly facing to the side fence if you're doing a step-up motion, and then turning the hips slightly more than the knees and the shoulders slightly more than the hips. That'll just allow you to basically unwind the segments up and out into the contact. Which leads us to the last component that Henry's made a great change on, and that is a power line. So again, borrowing a phrase from Steve Smith, from your nose to your toes, you want your body segments facing 45 degrees to the right at the contact, this way, as opposed to over-rotating and facing forward. Oftentimes when I see a player who's almost facing forwards at the contact, usually that is a sign of not enough separation or coil at the start of the service motion, and we can tell that there's not a lot going on in terms of how the body's being used. It's going straight up. Versus if we look here on the left, if we clear all of this, if we look at the back right hip as an indicator of how fast it travels upward and how much distance it covers, you'll notice that Henry's back right hip on the left here, it just goes that much. But if we look on the right, he's done such a great job of loading down and back into that back right hip that he's using that energy way more efficiently to move that racket faster into the contact. Now, is Henry hitting 30 miles an hour or 50 kilometers an hour faster than he normally would before he made these technical changes? No, definitely not. I don't want to sell you fairy tales. But is he hitting efficiently? Is he getting more out of his body? Can he hit his serve at the same pace in the third set as he can in the first set? I think so. And why I'm comfortable saying that is we just look at how he's using his body. All other things being equal, he just has way more efficient technique. And that's really what we strive for. We strive for efficient technique that'll stand score pressure, time pressure, and also fatigue as the match continues and the tournament continues. And really now the most important part of the video is how long did it take to make these changes? Roughly 4 to 5 months. I know what you're thinking, it's a long time, but say it with me, and it's something we've discussed many times on this channel. Your strokes are motor patterns. It takes motor programming to make changes to your strokes. You cannot expect to just take one lesson on a stroke and expect the changes to be permanent. Big props to Henry for diligently working away on the progressions and drills that I gave him to make these changes to his serve. It was a challenge because he's changing motor patterns, and that's what you need to think about. Technical analysis gives you an understanding of what you could be doing better, but there's a process and progressions to making these changes. Simply having the information doesn't mean that you can automatically step onto court and make a change. It takes information, a plan, and commitment and deliberate practice to make changes to your strokes. And now I'd love it if you checked out one of my other videos.